So it depends on what you mean by accountability, right? So see, the current cryptocurrencies are not accountable to any government. There is no regulation, right? So in India, it is actually banned to actually use cryptocurrency like Bitcoin because these cryptocurrencies actually are extremely volatile. And the reason is that they are not backed by any real assets, right? So they are created by using computation and by solving some puzzles. And the reason why that is the case is because one of the properties of any currency or any asset is that it has to be scarce in order to hold its value, and it has to be access controlled, like so, which means that if you own an asset, then you should be the only one who can use it. So for that, strong cryptographic techniques are used for access control by using digital signatures and things like that. And then the currency is created by out of thin air by solving difficult cryptographic puzzles to show that you have done enough work to create the currency. So this currency does not have any value in terms of government guarantee, in terms of regulation like any regulators like Reserve Bank of India or central banks of various countries have no control over the currency, and therefore it's extremely volatile. It depends on people's perception of what the value of the currency is at this moment. So for example, Bitcoin was in March was around $4,000 a piece, and then after the Libra news it went above 10,000. Now that US Congress has asked Facebook to suspend development of Libra until it has done some investigation, the Bitcoin again dropped. So therefore there is not a whole lot of, so if you have invested last week in Bitcoin, maybe this week you will be poor by tens of quite a few percent. But if you had invested in March, then now you are rich, right? So this is the kind of situation in terms of cryptocurrency. Also because of this pseudonymity, there is a possibility of using that cryptocurrency in purchasing things like illegal drugs. And if you have heard of Silk Road, which was through dark web, people were using cryptocurrency to buy illegal stuff, even apparently order murders and things like that. So accountability is not there. Well, Facebook's Libra is not really a cryptocurrency, it's a digital currency. It is backed by real assets, right? So actually the way they have designed is that there will be there is a Libra association that Facebook has put together, which has MasterCard, Visa and various like Uber, Lyft and various companies. Any company can join apparently if it has a $1 billion worth or more, and also they have to initially invest $10 billion, and this investment together will be put into an investment in terms of government treasuries and from countries which has good yield, and then it has so low risk assets are used to back up the currency. Therefore the volatility is not the idea is that there should be no volatility because it is backed by currency, unlike cryptocurrencies which is not backed up by real currency. So in that sense, if you buy Libra, according to them it will be quite stable, and in fact dollar and euro and rupees might actually become volatile with respect to Libra, but not the other way around. But they also want the pseudo anonymity, and the pseudo anonymity means that you can create as many cryptographic identities, and you can transact with them. They are not connected to each other, so therefore illegal activities can still happen. Of course, since this is run by a particular organization, Libra Association, maybe there will be more. If they want, they can probably ban certain vendors and so on. So they can probably, if they come to know that this particular vendor is doing some illegal stuff, but if the vendor is also using pseudo-anonymous identity, then that may not be possible. So in that way, I think illegal activities could still happen. The other thing that they have said is that they are trying to be inclusive. So people who don't have access to banks, they will be able to use this digital currency to store their value, and also to do transactions if they have a phone, smartphone, which a lot of people now have. But there it may so happen that somebody might, let's say, convert rupees to Libra, and then the problem is that two problems. One is that the person who is outside the banking system is probably very poor, and therefore he doesn't have enough money to convert his local currency to Libra. In that sense, that there is a chance that initially there may be some free small amounts of Libra given to people or whatever. I don't know what the bootstrapping mechanism will be, but after that they will become unused, like the Jan Yojana accounts that we have in our country that were created, but eventually they were not necessarily all used because the people don't have money to put in the bank. The other issue is that the central banks of the countries, they regulate the monetary policy of the country. Right? Now, if everybody puts their money in Libra, on which the central banks have no control, only that Libra Association, which has Facebook and other companies, then maybe the central banks will lose control of the monetary policy of the country, especially if it's a very small country, and therefore it will be dependent on, for example, I think the country like Nepal, their central bank is not so independent of Indian monetary policy as one could think, or if you look at the euro is monetary policy of euro creation and everything is done by European Central Bank. Now, under its jurisdiction, there is highly, financially well-to-do countries like Germany, and on the other hand, it has Greece, and there is a huge problem because the current local situation cannot be reflected in the monetary policy. So that kind of, if that happens, if Libra takes too much strong lead over the local currency, then that can happen, and then the accountability of the local administration, accountability of Libra towards local administration will be nothing, and that is a concern that every central bank is now going to consider. In fact, I read in the Guardian that RBI has already, I haven't seen any news, but in the Guardian there was a report that said that Indian Central Bank, RBI, has said that now they are not going to, they already don't allow cryptocurrency, so they might not allow Libra also in India. So as Bitcoin, Ethereum, they are pseudo-anonymous, which means that it's not guarantees, it doesn't theoretically guarantee full anonymity, right? And it can relate transactions, sequences to know what a particular cryptographic identity is doing. It may not be able to connect that to a real world identity, but it can certainly then start doing something like banning that particular cryptographic identity and all that stuff. So Facebook also can do the same thing in Libra. It's a pseudo-anonymous. There are cryptocurrencies that have come up that are fully guaranteed anonymity with cryptographic guarantee of using zero knowledge protocols and so on. But right now Facebook is not doing that, but they said that they might go for full anonymity. But Facebook is also going to connect the wallets to WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger and all that stuff. If that happens, then your real world identity, or at least Facebook identity or WhatsApp identity, will be connected to your cryptographic identity, and then they will be able to connect the cryptographic identity to who you are, and then they can collect all the purchases that you are making and all the transactions you are making. And Facebook claims that it will not use that data. Actually, they are saying that they will have this Libra application, which is going to use, which will basically allow people to transact in Libra, and therefore Facebook will not have direct access to that data. But then we know what happened with Cambridge Analytica and many other cases. So should we trust Facebook? Because data is the new oil, and data is lucrative. Therefore, you should be able to use data to make money. So if you are going to make money from data, and Facebook is a corporate, I don't think that they will stop from being using that data. Well, that depends. So the reason why Bitcoin was created was mistrust on banks, right? And the idea was that you create cryptocurrency in a distributed system. No central bank is creating the currency, right? And therefore, therefore you are totally, independent of the banking system. Libra, on the other hand, is not independent of something, right? It will be dependent on the Libra Association, which has currently about 30 companies, but it will increase. So there will be a group of companies which will
call it as a corporate conglomerate.
Yeah, it's a corporate conglomerate, and conspiracy theorists will go into this various kinds of underground societies. You might have read some novels like that, who control the world. Like already there are conspiracy theories which probably are not true, that there are such secret societies of which various powerful people are members, and they actually control the world's politics and all that stuff. So such conspiracy theory might also be floated, that these companies are trying to do everything, and therefore people might still stay in Bitcoin or Ethereum. Yeah, so Bitcoin was created out of the mistrust for big banks and corporations. So Libra, on the other hand, will be controlled by a set of corporations in the Libra Association. They will actually also vote on the policies, and they will also maintain the consensus in the currency, right? In the of the transactions. So people who are using Bitcoin because of their mistrust for the big banks and corporates will not switch to Libra, right? And then the other issue would be that it might become a cartel of companies who would actually try to influence the world economy and thereby local politics of developing countries. So there may be mistrust. But I have a suspicion that most central banks will also put a heavy regulation, such high regulations on Facebook that Libra may not even go very far. In that case, the other cryptocurrencies will not be having that competition. But in general, I think that the niche community that uses cryptocurrency for a reason will not switch to Libra. There is no reason to. So see, the dark web is used often for illegal transactions, like different kinds of pornographic materials, various kind of secrets, scientific secrets, and all that stuff, malware. And the cryptocurrency is used just as a payment mechanism, and the reason why cryptocurrency is used there is because it's pseudo-anonymous, right? Now the Libra will be pseudo-anonymous, so potentially one could use Libra also there, but I have a suspicion that well, unless Libra takes over so heavily the entire customer base that other cryptocurrencies fall in value so much, then that cryptocurrency will be what's less to be used as a medium of transaction. In that case, they might use Libra. If Libra and Bitcoin and everything are coexisting, I would think that people will rather use Bitcoin, and because Libra still has all the data with Facebook and the conglomerate that they're creating, that might be people might be afraid of using that as a medium of transaction in dark web, and they might just use Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin falls, to like $100, then they may not. They may have to switch to that, or they might create another cryptocurrency because there is a very large community who uses this thing. So they might use their own cryptocurrency. I don't know what they are going to do. But yeah, I mean, there is no inbuilt mechanism as far as I could see from the white papers that has any reason to believe that any technological safeguard against being used in the dark web. Yeah, so that's a big concern. As I said, that Libra is designed to be stable, but I was reading an article by Joseph Stiglitz, he's a Nobel laureate in economics, and he's saying that dollar, euro, these things have been remarkably stable over last decade and so on. So people put their like high value, like people who have a lot of money, they might put their assets in dollars. Lot of central banks like RBI and Chinese central bank, they put a lot of their assets in dollars because it's stable. Now, if people start storing their values in Libra, especially in very very large numbers, let's say a country's 2/3 of the monetary values are stored in Libra, then that country's currency will be dwindling against Libra, right? Similarly, if most Americans put things in Libra, or Chinese central bank puts their storage in Libra, then obviously dollar will fall in value, right? So yes, that's a concern that I have read about in American government. The Congress is also going to they have summoned the Facebook people to the Congress on I think 15th or 16th of July to discuss these issues, and they actually have asked them to temporarily halt all plans to launch Libra until these things are clarified. So yes, there is a possibility, and that will not be, according to many, that will not be very good for developing countries, and also it will be too much under the control of the corporates rather than the governments. Yes. So even though they are saying that it's a blockchain, but it's not actually like a blockchain. In a blockchain, we have the way things happen is that people do transactions, they are put in blocks, and then there is a consensus made by all the interested parties who want to make sure that these transactions are valid, and then these blocks are made, and then another set of transactions come, another block is made, and these blocks are connected to cryptographic hash links. Facebook is not making a blockchain in that sense. It doesn't have a block. So it has a tree structure. It's called a Merkle tree structure, in which data is going to be stored. And the idea is that you are going to have a number of validators, and these validators, see, in Bitcoin or Ethereum, anybody can be a validator as long as it has enough computation power. Here the validators are only nodes which are from those companies who are part of the Libra association, right? So they will validate all transactions and do a consensus. So when you as a user, you want to do a transaction, so you put a transaction in the form of a script, right? And they have a language now called Move, which they are going to you have to write scripts in that language. Like for the script, it may be as simple as give this amount of Libra from my account to that guy's account, right? And then you do a digital signature and all that stuff, and you submit it to the system. That will go to the validator nodes, and the validator nodes will then take many of these transactions together in a batch in order to, for efficiency purposes, and then they will validate it by going through a consensus mechanism among these validator nodes. And this consensus mechanism is they have a new method called it's a based on Byzantine fault tolerant consensus mechanism, and this consensus, if they all agree, or actually 2/3 of the people agree, of the nodes agree that this is the correct, this is set of transactions are valid, then they will change the state of the database, and the database is in the form of a tree. So, and they use cryptographic techniques to prove to provide you a kind of a proof that your transactions effect has been reflected into the database, right? So then the client is happy. If the transaction is not valid or transaction cannot be done, then the client will be notified that something is wrong and your transaction could not be executed. So in that sense, that they have a set of technologies that they have developed. One is this new consensus algorithm based on Byzantine fault tolerance. They have this new this data structure called authenticated data structure. It's an authenticated data structure in the form of Merkle tree, which is replicated across all the validator nodes. And then they have the method for writing the scripts in a language called Move, which is a new language that they have developed specifically for this purpose. And it seems that they have already an implementation that they are calling a reference implementation, but and they have a wallet application called Calibra that anybody can download to start doing transactions. And they are going to connect this to WhatsApp and Messenger so that you can start doing transactions from those. So in some sense, they are inspired by WeChat of China. So we talked about this in the beginning, that cryptocurrencies don't have real world assets backing it up, right? Cryptocurrencies are created out of thin air just by spending computational resource, right? Like memory or computational cycles on the CPU cycles. And then therefore they are also limited in usually they have a limit on the number of like Bitcoin, you cannot create more than a certain number of Bitcoins ever, right? So here Libra is actually not like that. Libra is actually created against an existing set of assets which backs it up. It's like if you have like in old days they used to create as much currency as there is gold in the exchequer, right? So it's a gold standard. Here it's not a gold standard, it's a set of assets standard.
Like it's an investment standard.
Right. And that set of investment will keep increasing, because suppose you buy Libra using rupees, Facebook will put that rupees either in rupees or in dollars in some bank, right? And they will get interest. That interest will also go into that asset. So then they can issue more Libra, right? So this is a very different concept than the cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So there you have to do mining to do, and anybody can do the mining to create the currency if they have the computational power. Here that association will only create the Libras. So therefore it's not exactly a cryptocurrency, although it uses many of the techniques from the cryptocurrency, like the data structure, like the wallet, like using digital signature, using identities in terms of secret key and public key. All that stuff is very similar to cryptocurrency, but actual monetarily it's not a cryptocurrency in the sense of Bitcoin or Ethereum. Well, I'm too small a fry to actually predict that, because Facebook is very powerful. It has so far resisted regulatory attempts by US Congress, and it got fined by European courts, but it didn't. Not much happened, even though they have been found to have a lot of violations of privacy and other regulatory things, and there has been a call for breaking of Facebook because it's too powerful into smaller companies under anti-competitive laws. But Facebook so far resisted it, so they can actually achieve a lot of things that you think is possible. Other thing is that there has been a call by a lot of economists for all central banks to cooperate and come up with some policy as to what to do about Libra, right? Because it's a kind of a challenge to the standard monetary policies and the independent monetary policy of each country and things like that. So, and then currently US there is a moratorium for the development of anything for launching Libra. So with all that uncertainty, it's not very clear whether Libra will be successful, but given that Facebook is behind it, and then they are being supported by MasterCard, Visa, Uber, Lyft and all these companies, I am not going to write it off, right? So, but I would personally, I would think that it's a bad idea to give more power to large corporates. So it's not very good for regular people. Well, this is a good thing you are doing, bringing some ideas to the audience. So I think it's a commendable thing to do, and I think it's a good idea. Keep choosing good topics.